3, and
Yep.
that's fine. I don't have a hard stop, so if it goes a little over, that's okay.
Cool. Okay, we are live on behind the scenes on the Run With It podcast. We're here with William Warren and Michael Turay. We're going to talk about an idea related to trees and how you can make better use of trees that you need to cut down or ones that are falling down. So excited to get into the idea. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
I should say
Rock and roll.
to the watchers out there on YouTube and Facebook, this is the unedited version of the podcast. If you'd like to listen to the polished version, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. This will likely come out in a week and a half or so. And we would love your feedback. Email us at update@runwithit.fm with your thoughts about it. Okay, let's get into it, guys. Welcome to Run With It, the show that brings you untapped business ideas from successful entrepreneurs. My name is Chris Justin, and I'm here with Ethan Janney. Ethan, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. We got a really beautiful snowfall last night and this morning here in Chicago, beautiful Chicago, Illinois, or suburban Chicago where I live. You know, something very interesting, which I wanted to share, and it is not a lead into the podcast, by the way, just something interesting. So we expected the traffic. We're now driving my son to preschool for the first time past couple of weeks. We expected the traffic to be worse because it snowed, and it was actually the best traffic that we've had ever since we've been driving him to school for the past few weeks. And it's very interesting, and it just makes me think about the value of understanding counterintuitive outcomes of things that happen. I don't know why that happened. Maybe because we're in COVID times, a lot of people just decided to stay home or something like that. But sometimes things work out the opposite than what you think they would be.
Well, let's see if we can tie that back into the podcast somewhere later.
Tie right back in.
I'm gonna
the obvious was something to do with the snow and the firewood
and the firewood.
Yeah, so anyways, we have William Warren.
Quick plug. I need to make a quick plug to previous podcast episode that we had. Episode 18, we talked about the expensive water bottle with Jeff Proctor. Fitbit last week just released a insulated stainless steel Bluetooth smart water bottle for $75, and they are sold out until February 12th. So Jeff, you were onto something with that.
Good call, Jeff.
We had a good discussion about it, and Fitbit's raking it in. We did talk about that about a year before it came out. So if you're looking for ideas for things that Fitbit might steal in the future, you've come to the right place. All right. We've got William Warren and Michael Turay on the podcast today. William is the founder of Sketch Effect. Is that correct?
That's right. Founder and CEO.
Founder and CEO of Sketch Effect. We'll talk more about that at the end of the episode. And Michael Turay is an expert woodsman, maybe not woodsman, woodworker. He's going to hold our feet to the fire as we talk about this idea here, which William, why don't you kick it off? Tell us when you came up with this idea.
Sure. I can't pinpoint the specific moment, but I've had many moments where I've either been preparing to have a guy's fire pit night in the backyard, or maybe it's the wintertime and we're preparing to get a fire going in the fireplace. And I go down to my wood pile and I realize I have no wood left. So then I'm scrambling, I'm trying to find wood, and inevitably I end up doing something dumb, which is I go to Kroger and I spend a lot of money for a tiny, tiny bundle of firewood. And that's just dumb. I just think that's annoying. I think that there's a lot of wood out there. People are looking to get rid of a bunch of trees and limbs and things like that in their yard. And there's a lot of people that want to burn wood in fireplaces, in fire pits, and in smokers. And I figured there's probably a better idea out there.
Do you remember how much a lot of money on a bundle of firewood has been?
I think with my Kroger shopper card, it was $5 for a bundle of like 4 logs. It was pretty pathetic.
4.
Yeah, 4 or 5. And that burned in about 20, 30 minutes. So I bought 4 bundles for $20 and had maybe a 2 or 3 hour fire pit.
Okay, yeah. There's some profit to be collected there.
Yes.
A lot of people
So
I know buy firewood by the cord, especially if you are going to buy for the season and you frequently make a fire. I think if the average price per cord is about $300. I actually don't know how many logs are in a cord.
I think maybe Michael could tell us if I'm right in this. I looked up, they called it a face cord. I don't know if that's the same thing as a cord, but face cords
Yeah.
of various woods. Yeah. It's the
Yeah,
same thing.
so a cord is kind of the same thing. I think a face cord sometimes is like a portion of the cord, like a half or a third. But a cord is supposed to be the volume of wood that takes up a 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot, hypothetical area, or volume rather. So
okay,
that's what a cord is supposed to be. Yeah.
Okay,
It's a
so
lot.
a face cord definition here is 4 feet by 8 feet by 16 inches. So maybe they equal about the same thing. Those things are $190 for mixed hardwoods. I got a $220 for oak, a $250 for red elm. So yeah, up to $300, but perhaps a little bit less.
So
And that's it. That's the episode of Run With Us. We just wanted to let you guys know how much wood is, and we're signing off.
Now you know. Yeah. I'm glad that you brought this idea up. It's I think it taps into a larger movement, which is where I would steer the idea a little bit to making use out of wood that otherwise would end up in a landfill or a wood chipper. Right now, if you have a tree that you need to cut down, it's either it's dead and you're worried it's going to fall over and hit your home, or for some other reason you need to cut down, maybe it's unsightly. You have to pay an arborist, and that's expensive. And then for the arborist, they don't have a good way of using that wood. They don't have anything that they're going to do with it. So typically it's just a cost for them to dispose of it. And at the same time, we're buying all of this wood, high quality wood from overseas, and spending a ton of money on that wood to turn it into furniture. So there's definitely an opportunity there to just use this wood that we have that is going to waste right now, and use it for firewood or even furniture, wood pellets, all the other things that we use wood for.
Yeah, there could be an entire ecosystem that repurposes old wood that normally would just get discarded. And, I'm thinking about the cord and the, 4 foot by 8 foot. That's a lot of volume of wood. And I know for me, a lot of times it's an afterthought. It's, I'm having some friends over. I want to do a fire pit. Maybe I haven't planned out ahead of time. Maybe I'm not that forward thinking to buy a massive, cubic, I don't know, whatever the math is, block of wood. So yeah, I think there's probably something that taps into this, I need it now, I want to do it now, kind of mentality that makes Uber so successful and DoorDash and some of these immediate kind of gratification apps and platforms. Something that you could use to dispose of wood you want to get rid of without paying that expensive arborist, without schlepping it to a landfill yourself. But that also satisfies the demand of people that want wood, want firewood when they, right when they want it and haven't maybe planned out in advance.
So I can tell you that I used to live in Durham, North Carolina, and while searching around on Craigslist for lumber, which is something I do because that's who I am, I came across a couple people who did something similar to what you're talking about. They split firewood at their own house and stacked it and seasoned it to dry it, and they would offer delivery of that firewood, for whatever cost that was available. But this is an individual doing something, not a large scale collective like an Uber would, like an Uber type situation would allow. But there is. So what I'm trying to say is that there is demand for this type of service to begin with, because other people have come up with similar ideas.
Right. And I've seen similar type things where it's a kind of a one-off company or a local even like college kids, like, local people going around and collecting up people's discarded old trash wood and then repurposing it and selling it. I mean, it's an age-old entrepreneurial kind of spirit, right? You take somebody's leftovers and then you turn it around to make value out of it. And so, yeah, in my mind, when I was kind of running with the idea, I imagined this amazing app where you can log on and you can click whether you want to give wood or if you want to receive it. And if you want to give it, you kind of punch in your address, how much it is, roughly the quality of it, and then boom, the app works. I'm not an app expert, but I imagine, all the gears turn and all that. And then some local person who wants to make some money receives that request, drives to your house in their pickup truck or whatever, and then takes it off your hands. Didn't cost you anything. And then now the company has some raw resources to repurpose into actual firewood. And then you flip this, you flip it around, and then you're someone who's hosting a fire pit night or want to burn wood, and you click the button that says, I want to receive it. And you type in how much you want, when you want it, your address. And then again, a local delivery person probably will go to the hub, whatever. I guess there'll probably be a regional hub where the wood is stored and all that, and then picks it up and then drops it off for, a fee. So that's kind of in my mind how I imagine this would work.
Jump into devil's advocate mode here. Why not have something like Postmates do that from Kroger, for example, to just deliver that $5 cord? And maybe it's a little bit more expensive. Maybe you'd save a couple bucks if you used this app, but is there enough margin in this business to create an entire ecosystem just around wood, as opposed to using some of the existing tools out there?
I imagine there'd have to be margin because the raw cost of the supplies would be essentially free. Basically, your raw material is people's time to pick it up and then process it chop it up and process it. That's what I would imagine. I imagine there'd be a lot of cost savings from, cutting out Kroger, cutting out whatever company they're using to get their firewood from, and just it being almost like a direct supply chain from the original source of the wood to the customer. Again, I like the devil's advocate question because clearly I haven't made the entire business model yet for this, but.
Ethan, you're pulling up some video that you're trying to show us?
Yeah, I want to try something here and share a little clip here from a video I found when researching this. This is from Joe's Premium Firewood on YouTube.
So there's $75. So to get $200, I got to spend $75 and work about 7 hours. Now, if you count drive time, that's even more. Then it comes out to 10 11 hours total that I have into it. So as you can see, I'm not getting rich. I think
so I looked up like profit margins on firewood online, and there's this guy from Joe's Premium Firewood posting YouTube videos, and a lot of them have subjects like, can you make money on firewood? And basically all of them are him complaining about he makes no money at all, chopping firewood. I don't even know why he does it. If it's just like a hobby or whatever, he just likes to complain or something. I think we got to deal a little bit with this factor of, how much of the equation, how small are we going to go in on the equation? When I looked into firewood and profitable businesses that deliver firewood, it seemed like they were the ones that were most profitable were the ones that are doing it on a larger scale. You can pick the type of wood, you can do cherry, you can do walnut. They're custom delivering to, restaurants, things like that. And it's, they work on volume. So I want to throw this into the equation here and say, are we getting ourselves, how deep do we want to get ourselves into the actual processing of the firewood? And if we do we want to play with the larger players as opposed to the smaller players?
I think that's a good question to let simmer a little bit here. I want to introduce another business model into it. Typically on the show, we just kick around a bunch of stuff and we're riffing. So, don't be offended, William, if this idea ends up in a different place, or it might end up in exactly the same place, but we're just going to, have fun throwing around
Let's
different
do it.
aspects. So in doing some research, Mike shared with me this company called the Urban Lumber Company, and they're based out of Portland, Oregon. And what they do is they follow around arborists and just pick up the trees that they would otherwise discard, that they would chip or that send to a landfill. And it saves the arborists money because they don't have to dispose of these giant trees. It saves them time because they're no longer the ones responsible for doing that. So they can get off the job site quicker and do more jobs per day. So it's a huge benefit to them. This guy has been super successful. They just take those trees and turn it into, he's turning it into furniture, tables, chairs, cabinets, dressers, etc. And that model has actually been emulated in other places across the country. There is the Urban Wood Network, urbansalvagedwoods.com. I think Ethan and I both listened to the same podcast, or at least maybe not the same episode, but the Woodpreneur podcast, how to become an entrepreneur.
William, you sent us on the most fantastical wild.
I didn't realize I was sending you down the rabbit hole.
This is how we like to spend our time.
Shout out to the Woodpreneur podcast. Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you, Steve. You helped us out with the research here. But
subscribe.
It's a network, the Urban Wood Network. It's a network of sawyers, arborists, furniture makers, woodworkers, and makers. And this lady that runs it, Jennifer, I forget her last name, she's helped a bunch of people start this sort of business where you can follow an arborist around and reclaim the wood and sell it and turn it into something valuable. I think that is an essential part of this idea is taking wood that would otherwise be discarded or it's hard to use effectively and making good use out of it. It's hugely beneficial for climate change. It's more efficient. There are a lot of reasons why it makes sense. And the downstream, exactly what it turns into, you can calculate that based on what the product streams will be worth, right? If you turn it into lumber, how much is that worth? If you turn it into firewood, how much is that worth? If you turn it into wood pellets, how much is that worth? How much is the processing required for each of those things? It can take a long time to dry wood before you're able to process it, especially if you're in a wet climate. So there are a lot of factors that go into place, but there is an example in place for how to make the best use of this wood, and it's not tapped out. I'm sure that if someone wanted to start this in Pittsburgh, you could.
So the question is, in you bringing this up, and maybe you alluded to it, is are we wanting to pivot towards making furniture out of it or doing something else with it besides creating the firewood, or do we want to just use that piece of the model of following the arborist around and actually do the firewood? Or do you have a preference?
Yeah, let's speculate a little bit here, and then Mike can correct us when we're being a dummy. Yeah, I would think that there's much more value in turning it into furniture than there would be turning it into firewood. It seems like it'd be very process heavy to turn it into firewood, and the scale isn't necessarily there to set everything up. But if you have a giant log, you might get 1 or 2 tables out of it, a giant tree. And that's just much less processing, and it's a higher end consumer. I have a hard time imagining how it's much easier for me to imagine selling to the arborist because they have a very clear need and you're immediately going to save them money. And it's a smaller subset. The marketing is way cheaper if you go to the arborist as opposed to mass market and consumers. So there are a lot of reasons that I like that approach. There's already established models that you can emulate to do so. And you can pay Jennifer, I think, $200 and she'll teach you how to do this. And you can start a small business in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I love that business model. I mean, the thought of following the arborist narrows down your ideal customer persona to a very, very small niche type person. I think the original idea with this app business model is that the customer could be potentially anybody and everybody, which sounds really good when I look at like Uber and Postmates and things like that. But yeah, I think the idea of getting a business up and running, up and off the ground, trying to target every single customer on the planet is a lot more intimidating than maybe going after the arborist or building a business model where you, you're specifically searching for premium wood and funneling it to funneling it towards products that are higher dollar amount, higher profit margin, things like that.
We are getting a little bit. So the thing that I'm attached to here is there's something romantic about fires, and I think if we go into I totally agree that the custom furniture one, there's a higher profit margin, and turning the collected wood into furniture seems a lot easier to make a buck on than to turn it around on firewood, because people are going to burn. They're probably not going to pay a lot of money for it. But yeah, so hopefully I want to get back into it a little bit, talking about the firewood. I think what we could do is become an intermediary between the various players, be it, you could include people who are collecting firewood, from homes of fallen trees, things like that. You could integrate with companies that are doing this on a large scale. I ran across a couple of profitable firewood, seemingly profitable firewood businesses. But one thing that they had on their website, something interesting. They had different features of the wood, almost like you might see in an app. It's cherry wood, and this is the dry time, and this is the odor that it has, right? And this is how long it's going to burn. And it almost even had that appearance of, oh yeah, let me go to the app and I can custom select what kind of wood I want for this beautiful aromatic fire that I'm about to make. And there you can also go into the custom side of it, where you charge a little bit more because there's like a bespoke customized service around what you're doing. And people are not just paying for the wood, they're paying for the experience of you helping them build a romantic fire.
Yeah, you could go that route. I almost imagine this being like less bougie than that. Like sometimes when I want to burn fire, I'm just looking for anything that's dry and not going to destroy the earth when I light it on fire. So I'll give you an example. The other day, my son really wanted to do a fire in our fireplace, and I was out of wood. And we literally went to the local park. There had been a storm there a few days ago, and just some random limbs had fallen. And we just collected a bundle of random limbs. I have no idea what kind of wood it was. I have no idea if it was fancy or what odor it would give off. All I knew is that it was discarded wood. Eventually the local park service would come and have cleaned it out anyways. I gave my son a lesson that we were doing the neighborhood an act of service by clearing this wood, and then we threw it in the fireplace and burned it. So
you also had no idea that was illegal.
Yeah, probably.
There's all these weird things that are probably a great idea and great for everybody, but that happen to be illegal because you did it on like public land.
We didn't burn it on the public land. Burned it.
No, collecting wood. Like I found out doing a composting project that like collecting people's, refuse, like wood, what do you call it? Food scraps without a permit, it was illegal, right? You think you're doing something good for the environment, helping people out, whatever. And all of a sudden you find out you need some type of permit to like collect discarded items. Anyways, aside.
Yeah. No, that's good learning. I'll keep that in mind next time. No good deed goes unpunished. So yeah, I wonder, I think you could either take this model and go very premium to where you do have that kind of white glove experience where you know exactly you want cherry wood or you want oak or hickory or whatever, you want chunks or you want logs or you want kindling, whatever, and then kind of tailor make your cart or your basket. Or you could just say, I want something I can burn and I want it in 10 minutes and or I want it in 20 minutes and I don't care what it is as long as it burns. I see. I could see you go either the more like premium kind of white glove or just the more like everyman kind of give me something I can burn route.
So I'm wondering if the answer isn't one or the other, but a combination of everything to some degree. for instance, I work at an urban sawmill, and I have done some milling there. And the issue is that you can't use 100% of the log when you're milling it into lumber. So you always have these like weird offcuts that are just kind of, they're either a little bit thin or like not something that you can really turn into a nice usable board. What we do with that is we make a big bonfire, and while we're milling on a Sunday, we start a fire at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by the time we clean up at the end of the day, we found the embers and we put it out. All of that could be cut into chunks of wood that could be sold as firewood, So, and then another idea is that wood shops that build cabinetry and other, furniture out of just dimensional wood that they buy from a lumber yard, at some point in time, you're going to have a piece of wood that's a foot long and you can't do anything with it. And that becomes wood scrap, which is a problem for these places to deal with. They have to throw it out, pay for their own dumpster fee and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if like there was something like a network like this, what you're proposing, where you can say, hey, I have this wood available, come and grab it out of our trash, we'll keep a special trash can for it, and like come pick this up, and it's all dry chunks of nice hardwood. They're a little bit small, but they burn, and those would be available for free to anyone to pick up. So I think there's a lot of small little aspects of the general wood industry that aren't accounted for in how to deal with a lot of the waste. For instance, the sawdust could potentially be compacted into wood pellets for wood-fired stoves and that kind of thing. But that is, from what I've experienced, rarely ever happens. So I think there are a lot of things to do with wood waste that could be tapped into here.
Like if you had to put a number on how much that waste would be valued at from an average log, is that on the order of $5, $50, $500? What would you say?
Oh, if we were to cut it up and turn it into firewood?
Let's say a furniture maker is the exact scenario that you described. You've got wood that came in and you've cut your piece, you're using it for a table or whatever, and you have all these leftover scraps. How much would those scraps be worth if you sold them as composite in their composite parts?
Oh, okay. So for instance, we're working on a petite table right now, and we realized that we were having a lot of offcuts that were just trash to us. And in an afternoon, we filled up a 55-gallon, trash can. So, and if I were to imagine those $6 bundles of wood, I could fit, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so of those $6 bundles of wood in the same trash can, maybe more. It's hard to
$72.
judge the volume. Yeah. So, I think that there could be something there. And like I said, for the wood shop, that's just, we have to pay to dispose of that. And if you reduce how often your dumpster gets picked up, and then have your wood waste, which is a green product essentially, can be turned into, just kindling or whatever for somebody's fire, that seems like a better use for that than to just sit at in a landfill somewhere. So
how many times per day or per week, if it's not that often, would you fill up one of those 55-gallon drums?
I can try. I mean, every day is different. It's hard to judge. I probably would fill up 2 of those a week, but we're a relatively small shop, and there's a lot bigger operations out there that produce a lot more wood waste than we do. So
that's a good $600 in waste in a given month, I guess, and you said you're relatively small, so if you can pick that up for free from a bunch of different places, it could definitely add up.
Yeah. Turn that into bundles that you can sell. and drop off to other people. Just as and the other benefit of working with wood waste from a wood shop is the wood is typically dry, so you don't have to like split a log and let it sit for 6 months until it dries before you can sell it, or else somebody's going to have a hell of a time lighting that wood on fire, and actually, and it's going to produce like a ridiculous amount of smoke. Nobody's going to hang out near that fire. So,
is that what happened to you, William?
Oh, many times. I guess that's what happens when you just burn random stuff you find, is you get all kinds of strange smoke. So I'm learning a lot. I had no idea that the wood industry was so intricate. Peeling back the layers. It's great.
Yeah, that's what we do here. I want to go back to my horse here. I picked my winning horse, and I'm just gonna keep riding it. The idea of turning it into furniture. I can picture that. Let's say you get this custom table made, and along with it, you have the story of where this tree was from, what its experience was, how old it's been. Like, you know much more about this, how it came to be. And I think that there's something there with the ESG focus that people have right now, environmentally sustainable. I forget actually the acronym. I have to look this up. So let's see if Ari can correct this in post. ESG acronym: environmental, social, and corporate governance. There's something with that within this idea. If you can improve upon this entire process, you can make people feel good about the furniture that they buy, in the same way that they can feel better about the meat products that they buy because the animals are humanely raised. You feel better about, I would feel better about buying a table if I knew that it weren't part of some big forest clearing initiative.
Yeah, or you could even do like localized things where, let's say you love vacationing in Asheville, North Carolina, and then you could collect wood that falls in the mountains of Asheville, and then you could make an Asheville table. This table was made from a whatever tree that fell on the the Blue Ridge Parkway in Asheville, and you can and you charge a premium for that because there is a story and it connects into people's emotions, and you can do that for every single city known to man. I know before we hit record, I mentioned that Atlanta has the highest tree coverage of any major city in the US. So let's say you grew up in Atlanta and you move away, you could buy a table or a chair or a set of tables and chairs that was made from harvested wood from a tree that was in your childhood neighborhood or something like that. Or a national park, like let's say that you collect the wood that falls in national parks. I'm sure you have to go through all the loopholes to make sure you're doing that ethically and correctly and checking all the boxes. But I mean, how cool would that be to have a table that was harvested from wood that fell in Yosemite or in, I don't know, somewhere. So yeah, there could be a really cool social good route there, and tapping into, people's emotions and their memories and stuff like that.
I heard about this. Well. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So I can tell you that I've been working at this I've been living in Phoenix for a year and a half now, and I've been working here ever since I moved here. In that year and a half, we've done 2 pieces of furniture from trees that were cut down on the same property that the house is now built on. So, and one of them was particularly unique. Built a table out of ficus lumber, and ficus is just a tree that, that's kind of an office plant. So the fact that there was a ficus tree that was large enough to cut lumber out of was something that was really remarkable. Really interesting looking lumber. I've never seen it before. You can't find it online anywhere. So that's part of the rarity of what you can get from dealing with urban lumber to begin with. Another thing is we actually did a table and staircase for a house out of silk oak. I think there were 3 large silk oak trees on this property that they built this fantastic house on. And the dining table and stair treads were actually featured in Dwell magazine. So I can attest to the fact that there is a lot of interest in, having that wood or furniture with a story behind it, more so that makes it even more special for the client. So
Yeah,
that's
you're reminding
definitely
me.
the route that we've gone down.
You're reminding me of an episode of the Woodpreneur podcast, which I listened to, where they were interviewing
We are now
Rack and Sack.
sponsors of the Woodpreneur podcast.
They were interviewing.
I have to say, I've learned a couple things from you. Woodpreneur podcast is definitely something that I will be looking up. I'm shocked that I didn't know about that already. So thank you.
It was relatively boring for me to listen to, but I do have some interesting things.
You got to cut that. We're getting Steve on here. We got a partnership. We're going to co-brand. All of our episodes in the future are going to be focused on woodworking.
All right, let me tell the story of Rack and Sack kilns, okay? Because I think this has multiple aspects that are interesting. First of all, Rack and Sack kilns, it basically started as one of these type of businesses where they would collect somebody's wood and they would make furniture from it. And yes, that was exactly their focus. The tree that your grandfather used to play on and, had a swing on and climb when he was young. It's the same tree that we made this heirloom table with that we're going to keep, for centuries. But at the same time, the story of their business goes like this. They were doing that, and they found it difficult to dry the wood out, and there was no resource for kilns in their area. And so they bought one of these custom kilns from iDry, which was the actual sponsor of the podcast episode, which I listened to, which is like a kiln maker. So they buy a kiln, right? And then they start being the local company that dries wood for anybody that needs it to be dried. And at this point, they've already purchased a couple more kilns, and this has turned into the primary source of profitability for their business, is that they're just the local resource for drying wood. And so what I think is interesting about this is just to bring in a factor that's come in, several times in the podcast, is that's kind of a boring business idea, is just to like have a big, shipping container size thing that dries wood, and you just sit there and you make that happen, and that makes you money. It's not as romantic as a firewood app or as a furniture app or anything like that, but it's just interesting to see that there might be more profitability in something like that if you really wanted to make a profitable business.
Yeah, that wouldn't get you on the cover of a magazine.
Kiln Weekly, come on.
Yeah,
Kiln Weekly.
Woodpreneur.
It would certainly get you onto an episode of the Woodpreneur podcast.
Yes. Yes. I agree with you. I mean,
I can attest to those kilns. We have one of those kilns in our shop, and they're fantastic.
Exactly. And this episode is sponsored by iDry, the most advanced state-of-the-art technology in kilns.
I mean, there's something to be said for the kind of average Joe business, which is very profitable and not sexy, but just requires a lot of hard work and intentionality. And, I think there's this kind of glamorous, idea around the entrepreneur and creating the next greatest app or the next greatest whatever. But yeah, I mean, the next greatest business idea might just be doing a better job at this, thing that people have been doing for a long time. Or doing it better, or doing it in a more ethical way or sustainable way. So yeah, I think there's
an entire movement around that called the sweaty startup movement. And it's very timely in that a lot of people who have those type of old school businesses are coming of retirement age. So you may even be able to buy a business from someone who maybe they're a milling shop or an arborist or any other number of sweaty type startups, and take that over and apply basic business principles, modern business principles, bringing it to the digital age, things like that, and greatly improve upon it.
Yeah. On the topic of just,
I will say,
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was going to bring it back to the idea of the app being in somebody who works, what did you call it, a sweaty startup? This business that I'm in probably counts as one of that for sure. But one of our, to use some of your technology pain points, is that it can be really hard to locate these these trees that have just fallen from a storm and that kind of thing. So if there was an app to help, connect the people who would be interested in the raw material, the log on somebody's property, and somebody who would be willing to work with it, whether it's an arborist or a shop like ours, or even just a landscaping crew to help you clean up the mess. They could look at that as a way to, for the homeowner to easily find somebody to deal with their problem. So, that network there, I think there is something there that would be useful for a lot of people. So that's one of the things that intrigued me so much whenever Chris told me about this idea.
Yeah, I think that was one of the kind of the core pieces of the puzzle, was building out the network of not only meeting the demand of people that want to have a fire pit or want to burn some wood right here and right now, but also meeting the demand of people that just want to get all this junk wood out of their yard, and they don't want to have to go through the hassle of arranging the bulk pickup or arranging the arborist to come and get it all, but just want to, press a button on their app and have somebody who wants the wood and knows the value of it, who can come and swing by and grab it and take it off their hands. Obviously, there's a lot more complexities in the business model, which we've unpacked for the last half an hour. But yeah, in my original vision, that was you're meeting both of those needs on both ends of the cycle.
I wanted to bring just something into the conversation. So as we're talking about what are good startup ideas and things like this, we don't always talk about our guests' startup experience, but I think yours is a little bit interesting for our listener to hear about, William. In your case, you have a kind of a romantic sort of business idea, right? It's fun. You're sketching, you're being creative. There's a lot of fun stuff going on there, and it's a business that, interestingly enough, you sort of stumbled upon, right? It's like you started doing sketching and in meetings and things like that, and people said, "Hey, that's cool. Hey, you know what? I'll pay you to do that." And it just sort of grew, and you decided you would just jump on this opportunity to start a business. And so I'm curious about your perspective on just starting new projects. I know you might have had experience starting products, but how do you think much about starting new businesses? Because you weren't one of these people, kind of at your job thinking, I got to be an entrepreneur. I got to be an entrepreneur. It just sort of happened to you. Any thoughts about starting businesses?
Yeah, I never grew up hungry to be an entrepreneur. I kind of stumbled into it. I'm a creative turned entrepreneur. For me, it was always the product that fascinated me. Drawing, sketching, animating. For your listeners, I don't know much about wood, clearly, based on the last 30 minutes, other than I like to burn it and make delicious barbecue out of it. But I do know a lot about drawing. I do know a lot about illustration and design and things like that. And so, yeah, our business really just emerged organically because it was fun. I liked doing it. I sensed a demand, mostly amongst corporate, what would become our corporate clientele. And so, yeah, our entrepreneurial story is really just one of kind of sensing a demand, providing a product that people love, and then just trying to do the best possible job with getting that product into our customers' hands. To answer your question, I mean, now that I'm kind of doing this entrepreneur thing and have been doing it for the last 7 years, I love thinking of new ideas. Right now, the Sketchfect is my baby. We're still growing. We've been growing every year since we launched 7 years ago, trying to do it better, trying to figure out new products and find new markets and all that. So right now, this is consuming all of my energy, which is why this podcast is especially fun, because it's a little bit of a deviation from what normally consumes my mind, which is pixels and color palettes and things like that. But yeah, there's a bunch of ideas floating around in there.
Cool. Well, we'll have to have you back sometime. One thing I just want to point out here, and this is, again, my tiny obsession with the kiln profitability of kilns, and a little bit of a theme between that story I told about the kiln business and your process of starting a business, noticing a demand, like seeing that people are asking for something and wanting something and pulling towards something, and then just trying to ride that wave, right? Oh, I noticed that I needed a kiln and I didn't have one, and then people started using it, and now I'm building upon this sort of thing that's sort of market is pulling for this business idea. So it's an interesting tidbit just to think about entrepreneurship for those people that are sort of jonesing to be an entrepreneur and aren't yet, that to be on the lookout for businesses that are almost starting themselves, right? Where there's a demand that's just cropping up, and then just trying to ride that wave as opposed to creating something from scratch.
Exactly. I think a lot of people get the cart before the horse. They have an incredible idea and they've already, mapped out the business model, or even designed the app, or invested in the brick and mortar, or the branding and the marketing, or bought a website, but they don't have customers yet. And I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think it's better to find the customers first and then build the business around what those customers are asking for. That's our story. And yeah, I mean, we've never had a day without clients. I know a lot of startups begin and, they have a really hard time getting clients. And so I think if you begin with the demand first, begin with who their customer is, what need are you meeting? What problem are you solving? And then find a way to solve that problem in the most efficient and effective way, I think is a pretty good playbook for small business.
I think that's a great place to wrap here. William, people can find you at thesketcheffect.com. Anywhere else that you'd like to direct them to?
Sure. Yeah. So they can find me on Instagram. It's at WilliamCWarren.com. It's at Instagram at WilliamCWarren. No.com. They can find me at WilliamCWarren.com. And I've been posting content for creative entrepreneurs, especially folks like me who always love to draw or illustrate or design or paint or animate, whatever, and just need a little bit of help connecting the dots of business, making it a little bit less scary and a little bit simpler, more approachable. So that's at WilliamCWarren.com, on Instagram at WilliamCWarren. And if anyone's interested in our sketching work, it's at thesketcheffect.com. So feel free to check that out as well.
Great. We'll link to that. Mike, if people want to connect with you, where should they go?
They can find the shop I work at ironwoodmills.com. And we're also on Instagram at ironwood_mills. And if you're interested in following me and some of my own personal projects on Instagram, you can find me at Michael Turay. That's spelled Torep on Instagram. So I'm not as active on it as I probably should be, but I still have some cool projects on there occasionally. So
great.
Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure talking with both of you guys. Thank you for kicking around this idea, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk later on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, hold on. So I'm going to stop and